start with the Milwaukee County Transit System bus strike. We're joined by Don Behm, our Milwaukee County government reporter. This is an unusual strike in the sense we know exactly when it's going to be over. 72-hour strike. But talk about, we're halfway into it. Who's winning the perception battle right now? Or do you think people are siding more with the union's case or the county and the company's case on this issues?
Well, I don't think either side is gaining friends. The bus drivers are on the picket lines. They're not being joined by a lot of non-union members on the picket lines. There were a few teachers union folks out there the other day. But people are honking as they drive by, but the picket lines aren't being maintained all day and all night long. I drove by Fond du Lac Avenue last night around 6. There were only about a dozen people on the picket line. I think the bus drivers, not perception, but they have made their point that that this is a basic service and it disrupts people's lives without it, and I think that was why they went off the job for 72 hours.
I think more people know today how much a bus driver makes than they ever did before. I mean, so
sure.
Both sides getting information out there on the bus drivers. The AFL-CIO put out a press release, but that's about it in terms of their support. Teachers union, as he said, a few people have been out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, they clearly chose this time for a reason. They didn't do this 2 weeks ago. It's in the middle of Summerfest. A lot of people use the bus to get around that might or not otherwise do so. But
right, July 3rd, the day before the 4th, is actually the busiest day of the year for the bus drivers.
It's all on the fireworks.
It's all fireworks and Summerfest. So they chose the busiest time of the year to do this.
All right. Well, it's like as I was looking at this earlier, we kind of have the 4 Ps. We've got pay, pensions, part-time drivers, and potty breaks. Right. So what is the key issue here that really is what's driving the strike and the inability to come to a resolution?
I would say pay and part-time drivers. Potty breaks, the idea of bathroom breaks is really more of an emotional issue for these drivers. But for contract bargaining, it's pay and part-timers. They rejected contract offers that gave them 2% cost of living increases each year, plus a 1% pay increase the second year of the contract. The drivers I talked to and union leaders do not consider the cost of living raises a pay increase. They just consider that the base that should go forward.
Contrast, though, I think we get a lot of people out there who they may not be seeing any raises in their jobs. Or things. Do you think, Dan, how do you think it's that, when you see a pay raise like that and some of these other benefits and things, do people identify with the bus drivers or not?
To tell you the truth, I think most people who use the buses don't identify with them. They see that they aren't getting a ride to work. The $62,000 is substantially higher than what most people think bus drivers are making. But
well, that's base pay plus overtime.
Right, it includes overtime, and that's an important point. And it's a dicey thing to do this during Summerfest because a lot of people are getting drunk and they could be driving now instead of taking the bus. So it's a calculated risk. But as I wrote today, the biggest loser in this is probably Supervisor John Whites. I got a memo from the bus drivers union in which it lays out a discussion in which on Sunday he was advising them to go on strike or to do a sick out if they didn't get what they wanted, and they ended up doing that.
Right, and he's one who's been very critical of Chris Abele about it. So there's that perception of the 5th P of politics here.
He's been saying this is all Chris Abele, the county executive's fault. But at the same time, behind the scenes, he's telling them to go ahead and use whatever rights and responsibilities you have to draw attention to what you're doing.
Yeah, we cover the county board. Talk about John Whites, and what was your impression of that letter and memo that came out?
Well, I was surprised that Supervisor Whites had done that behind the scenes. There doesn't seem to be a lot of talk about it yet at the county courthouse. I checked in with a few workers up there today, and no one's saying, oh, he stepped over the line or that was unethical. That discussion might develop. But I think the Whites reporting by Dan provides some insight as to why transit system officials were surprised by the hard line taken by the union at the last minute. You have to remember they were in negotiations on Tuesday, kind of a final mediation session. Monday the contract was rejected. Tuesday the final mediation, and the bus drivers decided to go through with their strike threat. that caught the transit system by surprise. They were not expecting them to actually follow through on the strike, and Wyshawn's intervention might explain that hard line.
It's also interesting, you see the relationship between the union and Supervisor Wyshawn. He's drafting a bill that would spell out some of the stuff that he thinks should be in the contract, and he sends a note, he tells them, I'm going to send you a draft of this according to the legislative director for the union, and I want you to edit what I've written and insert anything else you want in there. It's something you don't even see usually at the legislature. You occasionally see them saying, well, we'd like you to put this in there, but it's a little more bald than what you usually see.